Last week, a major developer, Rinomata Group, received a deferral on paying development charges, which would save the company while costing the city tens of thousands of dollars. Another developer, Shane Mason Homes, received an extension of the frozen DC charges for its development. Both decisions were made during the September 18 Finance and Responsible Governance Committee meeting. In the first matter, Isabel Bercasio, representing Rinomata Group for an industrial subdivision at 80 Big Bay Point, requested a deferral on development charges. Normally, these charges start accumulating at the time of building permit issuance. However, she proposed deferring them until the time of occupancy. She argued that this deferral would promote investment, assist small business owners with upfront costs, and stimulate job creation in Barrie.
It's really a time value of money kind of issue. And so if we don't have the money in hand, we're not earning, investment income on it. So there's a loss there from that perspective.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Villeneuve. Do you know what 100,000 square foot DC is equal to in dollars?
Give me a moment.
Okay, so we're talking 40,000 square feet or 1.2 million times 5%. Where are you at, Deputy Mayor? 1.2 times 5%. 60,000.
Mayor Alex Nuttall expressed support for the deferral. The committee approved the deferral and is potentially setting up a 5-year limit on the agreement. Secondly, Sean Mason of Sean Mason Homes requested an extension of the frozen DC rates for his development at 339 Veterans Drive. The company argued that due to project complexities and an oversight, it missed the deadline to pay DCs at the frozen rate by a short period. Deputy Mayor Robert Thompson moved a motion to set a 45-day term for payment after council approval. The motion was unanimously approved. At the end of the meeting, Deputy Mayor Thompson proposed an amendment to align the travel provisions for the International Relations Committee with the existing reimbursement of council expense policy. However, there was no discussion about the purpose of the changes and whether they would help the city save money or improve efficiency. The committee approved the amendment. Following is the video of the meeting.
Today we have 2 delegations. I will just double check with Madam Clerk. Should I go through those 2? Okay, I thought so, yep. Just a little rusty after the summer break. So the first report of the advisory committees to be received, 6.1, report of the Investment Board dated August 13th, 2024. And that's approved on consent. 6.2, report of the International Relations Committee dated September 3rd, 2024. Does anybody wish to hold that? No? And that's approved on consent. And then the third one is the committee travel policy. There's a recommendation from the International Relations Committee dated September the 3rd, 2024.
Hold, please.
And that's held by Deputy Mayor Thompson. So we will move back to our open delegations. Today we have 2 open delegations to be received this afternoon. In accordance with the city's procedural bylaw, a maximum of 5 minutes is permitted to speak. I will now call upon Isabel Bercasio, and I do apologize if I mispronounced, to deliver the open delegation. You have 5 minutes, and I understand she's attending virtually.
Good evening, committee members. Apologies, I was having some issues connecting to my microphone. I represent the Rinomata Group. We are the developers of the property located at 80 Big Bay Point. I'm here today to request that the committee members, in regards to Section 27 agreement, this particular development is an industrial subdivision, which we feel warrants some consideration to defer the development charges to occupancy. The reason we ask for this consideration is that we feel that it will help promote investment, help small business owners with some of those upfront costs related to developing these parcels into their businesses, and will save some operation costs. We hope that this is something that the committee members will consider. We think that it'll benefit the potential employers in the city of Barrie and help drive and promote business within the city of Barrie. So we just ask that the committee members consider that. And my deputation is brief, so I'll just end it at that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. Do members of committee have any questions for the deputant? Mayor Nuttall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your brief presentation there, Isabel. The end users, do you know what the size of the properties are and the size of the buildings that will likely go into each of these lots?
Yes. So each parcel, there's 25 parcels on this subdivision. The smallest ones range in size of approximately just shy of an acre to some well over 2 acres. We believe that the buildings that can be constructed here range in size from anywhere from 10,000 square feet to larger, depending on whether these users combine their lots. Again, what we've found is some users are looking for larger parcels, so this can range anywhere from 10,000 square feet to 100,000 square feet. And, you know, we're really trying to promote investment here. So various users, be it warehousing, manufacturing, etc. So it really depends on the user.
Thank you. And so for anywhere from 10 to 100,000 square feet, and are we aware of how many employees would be working on average per 100,000 square feet?
We anticipate anywhere, based on the size of the lots and the size of the buildings, anywhere from say 50 to 100 employees per user, depending on, again, the size of the building. So based on the size of this development, we're looking in the range of about 1,000 to 2,000 potential employees and jobs in this area.
Okay, thank you. Quick question through to I'm guessing our finance team. We changed the DC, or removed, I guess, the benefit for industry, which was a reduced DC overall, because we found that perhaps it wasn't having the effect that we thought it would. The financial request we have in front of us is a deferral, which I assume would result in a not a loss in the total DC received, but perhaps in the timing between when the DC would have been filed and the actual, is it the occupancy of the building?
Yes, that's what we're asking for the committee members to approve, deferring the DC payment until occupancy.
And the result of that, do we know what the cost of that would be on average? Would it just be the amount times whatever our borrowing costs would be? Is that how would we come up with whatever the cost of that would be to say yes to?
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Mayor Nuttall. Actually, I will defer. I'm not sure that we have enough information to come up with a cost at this point, but I'll defer that to our DC specialist, Mark.
Thank you, through you, Chair Harvey, to Mayor Nuttall. Yeah, so it's really going to be dependent on the size of the buildings, and at this stage, I think we don't have enough information as far as putting a quantum to it. But really, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is, rather than having collected the development charges at the time of building permit issuance, what the applicant is asking for is that the development charges be paid at the time of occupancy. So that can be, a number of months between the time that building permit gets issued versus, when the building is actually built and ready for occupancy. So it's really a time value of money kind of issue. And so if we don't have the money in hand, we're not earning, investment income on it. So there's a loss there from that perspective. And so that's really what we're talking about.
Okay, and so I'm going on memory, so what we're talking about is roughly 5% times per annum times whatever the amount is that we didn't collect up front. Does anyone know what 100,000 square foot industrial DC is equal to? Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Villeneuve. Do you know what 100,000 square foot DC is equal to in dollars?
Give me a moment. Thank you for your patience. It's about $3 million.
Rob was pretty close there with, the deputy mayor was pretty close there with 3.2 million, I think is what he said, but he'd like it to be 3.2 and not 3. So we're talking about, I believe there's 3 buildings, Isabel, that you're proceeding with sooner than later, is that correct?
We have 4 that we will be going in for permit in the coming months, and they are smaller in size, so they are just over 10,000 square feet each.
Okay, so we're talking 40,000 square feet or 1.2 million times 5%. Where are you at, Deputy Mayor? 1.2 times 5%. 60,000. Is now the time to comment or no? Just ask questions.
By all means, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. So when I look at what the incentives were before we changed and updated the DC bylaw, I believe it was about a 40% reduction on industrial DCs. So in that case, we would have had 1.2 million, resulting in $500,000-ish DC never recovered. What's being requested is, after the DC's been updated, obviously, is that we remove those soft costs as they're seen by the sector in advance to help lower the costs up front to spur the building to happen at a cost of $60,000 where we would have had a cost of, call it $500,000. I personally, when we look at all of the things that we do for residential development, and we don't know if those incentives actually benefit people who live in Barrie, when we're talking about jobs and employment, maybe we can't say just Barrie, but Barrie and area will be the benefactors of those, of that increased employment and that increase in jobs. So I'm inclined to support the request, recognizing that, if we see future requests coming forward for more buildings to be built, these aren't occupied and it's hanging on, then they wouldn't be approved in the future. But that's where I'm at, and certainly I'll cede the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Other members of committee, go ahead, Councillor Congo.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. Question through you to staff, if I may. When we are talking about the impact of a deferral, are we deferring just the amount of money that we otherwise would have received at the point of permit, or do we also get on top of that amount a certain percentage around interest? So hypothetically, if we were taking on debt to cover a DC we'd have planned for? Is there anything above and beyond, or is that amount static that we're talking about a deferral of? I can clarify if you need me to.
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Member Kungle. So I think that's really going to depend on what council decides to do. So I think the mayor was suggesting perhaps that no interest would be charged. So in that case, you would basically just be holding the amount that would have been owing on the time of building permit issuance, and basically just collecting that very dollar at the time of occupancy. Another option for council is that rather than having that opportunity cost or that revenue loss from that time delay, you could enter into a Section 27 agreement with that caveat or with that term to include interest as you see fit. That's really a council decision.
And then I'll do a follow-up, if I may, through the chair to staff. Has there been precedent of what we've done before on any deferrals to date, about what we've done on that? I'm not aware that we have. And then I guess separately would be whether or not we choose to do that. Is that a lever? So I know we are also trying to incentivize occupancy and building, and I like what you've presented, Isabel, but is there any caveat around that being triggered with a timeline and or a caveat of, I think it was Section 27 you made reference to, over a certain time period? So would that be used to kind of say, okay, pay the static up until a certain point, but we will start collecting interest at a certain point? I'm just thinking some type of cost recovery to incentivize where possible. I'm looking for, is there any guidance or opinion that staff could give on that, or how that could be structured for consideration?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Harvey. I think that a couple of points that you mentioned there. I think one of the options for you as well is, I think this is a rather large development. It could take many years. And so, this, Section 27 agreement could have a caveat up to council that says, this agreement is valid for any occupancies received within the next 3 years. And then anything beyond that, is outside of that Section 27 agreement. That's an option for council to consider.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess I'll put that on the table, as I'd really love to dialogue on that and then consider a motion that could put a caveat in place for a 3-year term.
I don't know if you want to repeat what you're
Sure.
going to put on the floor, so that way everybody, including the clerk, is fully understanding what we're dealing with.
If members are prepared for that, I can put that on the floor. I think there was something I can craft, but if there's no other conversation that you want to have, I can move to a motion.
Yeah, either that, or I know Deputy Mayor Thompson also wants to have some questions raised and stuff. So I don't know if you want to allow him to raise his questions, and then between the two of you, you can.
Okay, I'll let
decide
him
where you're
have
gonna
the
craft.
floor, and then I'll come back.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, great. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. Through you to staff, just for my own clarity, if we receive it on the issuance of a building permit, and I worked it out, it was like, it would probably been about 7 million if every building permit was pulled at once at 25 acres, like roughly around 250,000 square feet. Would we not put that money in our DC reserve? So how would we accumulate the interest? Like, it wouldn't go to our investment account. We would keep that in our reserve. So I understand that there's an associated interest payment, but how would we really calculate it? Because it wouldn't go into our investment account. We're probably overdrawn on our DC to start with. So is it because we're paying interest on the overdrawn DC account?
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Deputy Mayor. The interest would just be based on what we are currently earning. So any money that we receive would go to our investment team. They're currently working under a prudent investor status, and we're anticipating returns of, say, 4%, 5%. That's what we'd be anticipating missing out on by not getting the monies earlier on.
So just a follow-up, Chair. Thanks for that. So if we receive the check, hypothetically for $7.5 million on Monday, would we then in turn, like on Tuesday, put that into our investment account, or would that just go into our reserve account at the time? Like, because, like, especially if it's built in increments, like you wouldn't put like 100,000 in today, 200 tomorrow. Like you wouldn't just keep making deposits, because we have term deposits in our investment account. So you could never draw that money out without breaking, your terms. So that's why I was just like, I understand the concept about the interest, because it's lost revenue for us, which, we're trying to be fair, but also incentivize people to build. But we've also got to look at our own houses. So I do understand, but it was just more for my knowledge that do we take our CO pros?
Go ahead, CO.
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Deputy Mayor Thompson. Just for clarity, Deputy Mayor Thompson, all of our reserves get invested. So money in our DC reserve will also get invested. When those returns come back to us, those allocations go back to those reserves. So money we make on money we're holding in the DC account goes back to that DC account. So it isn't like a sock drawer that we stick in and it's stagnant. We actually, we do through our treasury team, invest that money, and then it gets reallocated back to those accounts.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. I don't have any more questions. I do have a motion to put on the floor.
Mayor Nuttall?
So, Deputy Mayor Thompson, I think if I can just take your point one step further, if that's okay. I think that what you were saying was this actually isn't an implication for the city of Barrie as much as it is an implication for the development charge account, which is developer funded. So the implication to our tax capital reserve, would that not be nil?
Through you, Chair Harvey, yeah, that's correct. And under this, it just flows through to the development charge rates that will come in the future.
So the financial implication to the city, if in the case that we don't, get down to zero on the development charge account, is nil?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, did you want to put something on the floor?
Thank you, Chair Harvey. So after hearing the deputation and the comment around, I can sense that there's a little bit of an appetite to, try to incentivize, as, Mayor Nuttall spoke, when we talk about creating jobs and stuff, in the affordability crisis, good jobs help with all that. So my motion would be that the City of Barrie enter into an agreement with the Rinomata Group and companies under Section 27 of the Development Charge Act to defer payment of development charges to the time of occupancy instead of issuance of building permit with the standard interest charges for the duration for their properties at 80 Big Bay Point Road to be executed by the mayor and the city clerk as such terms and in a form acceptable to the chief financial officer and director of legal services. And Councillor Kungle has a friendly, and I'll let her speak and I'll accept that.
Go ahead, Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. I'd like to see a term placed in it. I think we talked about 3. In some sidebar, I think we're looking at 2. So I'm not sure if there's an opinion of a timeline. But maybe a last point of clarification before I make an amendment, if I can, is to staff, how best do I structure a timeline into that motion so it triggers what we want it to trigger around a caveat for time frame? So I don't want to place it somewhere in this where it impacts negating deferral of the DC charges. It sounds like the time frame is something we just want to go into place for then applying an interest rate after a period of time. So I'm not sure if I need to frame the time frame tied to which after a 2-year time frame, interest rates will apply to to the charges.
Through you, Chair Harvey, to Councillor Kungle. Yes, so the motion currently reads that development charges would be deferred until time of occupancy. And after that, you could state that with occupancy happening, stipulate that occupancy happens within a 2-year period, 3-year period, whatever committee chooses.
I was going to give them the grace of 3. So look at me. It's been a long Wednesday. I'll stick to kind of my preamble before. So if I may, then the friendly being that after the reference to development charges in a time of occupancy, that if occupancy doesn't occur after a period of 3 years, interest rates would apply. I'm looking for financial language.
Yeah, if either staff are able to provide some background, if you think that is a doable amendment or friendly.
Through you, Chair Harvey, certainly it's up to council on whichever terms you would like to add, and that's one thing that you could add. I think what I was referring to earlier is that, and I'm not sure if it came across or came through correctly, but this is a rather large site, and it may take, many years or decades, to develop it. So I think, an agreement here, I guess you want to be careful that, whatever agreement you're coming to or terms that you're going to set, may not be something that you want to see for 25 years. So maybe you have a shorter time frame where you'd like to see those occupancies, these buildings actually be built. So, while you can add interest, after a certain time period, of occupancy, if it hasn't occurred, you may look to also that, if an occupancy doesn't occur by a certain time frame, 3 years, 4 years, whatever council would wish, that the agreement itself won't apply to those developments at all, because an agreement that happens today, might apply to a property that hasn't been developed for 20 years, but then in that 25th year, the agreement says this. So I'm just making sure that council understands that.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold up. I have the floor, and I think that opens up new conversation.
Okay, so first I'll go to Deputy Mayor Thompson, just because I know before Councillor Kungle even put the friendly on the floor, you said you were going to accept her friendly. So now that she's said it publicly, do you accept that as a friendly?
I do, and I just have a question of clarity after the
Sure, go
answer we
ahead.
just received. Thanks, Chair. Through you, in saying that with the occupancy and not seeing it, I'm just trying to think how to word this. So it basically would say that we enter into a Section 27 Development Charges Act deferral payment of the development charges at a time of occupancy instead of at building permit after the completion for 36 months. Would that be the wording then?
Mr. Villeneuve or Gillespie?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So the motion that was on the floor before the friendly was the standard interest charges for the duration of the property, and then it was changed to the deferral of the interest for 36 months, but that would be at the completion of the building. So the 36 months would stop at the completion because that's the only way you can get occupancy, like the building would need to be completed. So would that be the wording? And then another question on the answer we received, like if it took 25 years, this doesn't freeze the DCs for the entire agreement, correct? Like every time we had a new DC bylaw, they would be subjected to the new rates, correct?
Through you, Chair Harvey, no, if the rates are frozen, then they're frozen. And that's the point that Mr. Villeneuve was trying to make, that if we enter into an agreement right now to freeze the rates and it happens to go on for 25 years, we're not getting those updated rates outside of any interest charge that would be applied.
But I actually thought that DCs were only frozen for 24 months. So no matter, like the agreement we have is a separate one from the DC bylaw because it's so scripted that it's a...
Yeah, sorry. I think Chair Harvey, you're correct. So it wouldn't necessarily impact, the fact of the frozen rates because that, really comes from the Development Charges Act. And as you're right, like in a few years, like if they don't have an application in, then, it's not frozen at today's rates based on a Section 27 that you're coming to here, or at least the terms that I'm hearing. What that will do, though, is that, an agreement today, if there's no, limits on when that occupancy needs to occur, if it's not, within the next 3, 4, or 5 years, that means that a development in 25 years from now on that site, if there's no such terms, the city would have to not collect the development charges at building permit and only collect them at occupancy because there was an agreement made back in 2024 that said otherwise.
Great, thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and then after Mayor Nuttall, I'll chime in with some comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I know I've spoken a lot to this, so thank you for giving me the grace on that. I think there's two separate questions that that the members of the committee have been asking. One is, how long after a completion of a development that's ready for occupancy should the interest start being charged? So that's one. And I think that's the 3-year window that Councillor Kungle has asked to be amended into whatever the motion was before that Deputy Mayor Thompson put on. The second one is, how long do we want to allow this incentive to be able to be accessed? And while I'm incredibly supportive, I don't think I'm supportive of 25 years from now. So if you think about where we are today, we're in the highest cost construction we've ever seen. We're on the backs of a high inflationary environment. There isn't a lot happening in the construction world as we speak. We all know that. There's highways and roads, but there's not a lot of residential or commercial industrial development taking place at this point. And we have a developer who's coming to build on spec. And I think that deserves a reward for them to be able to take that risk. And if we can do something small like $60,000 to incent that, I'm good with it. But at some point, the market will flip. And is it a year from now? Is it 2 years from now? Is it 3 years from now? Or is it 20 years from now? We don't know the answer to that. So I think I'd be good with this agreement if we can agree this way to be a 5-year term. Like for the next 5 years, when accessing permits, this can apply on this property. And at that point, if we still haven't hit a market that's, running hard, then council can reassess whether that's needed at that point or not. But I wouldn't want to bind 25 years from now.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Just a question to the clerk to clarify, can that be as a friendly to this, or would that actually have to be an amendment?
Through you, Chair Harvey, I probably would like a few minutes just to put all the suggested amendments together and make sure with the finance team that we're okay with it. The other option is just to put a motion forward this evening and allow staff the week before General Committee next week to work on the wording prior to General Committee, because there's been a lot of questions back and forth about the term and about the length of the agreement and things like that. And then we could bring back proper amendments next week, and staff could bring forward any additional information that might help assist with some of the decision making, but I will leave that up to committee.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. What would you like to do then?
So there's a motion on the floor, and there's an amendment on the floor.
Well, that was a friendly.
It was a friendly?
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm good to proceed as is, understanding that there's going to be some information coming back from staff with how to box it in on the timeline.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to chime in quickly here now just because I'm looking at the time also. Originally, I actually did have some concerns with this, but now that I've heard, because there was very limited information provided to us, but now that I've listened to the deputant and understood the true size of this property, this isn't something that is going to get built overnight. This is going to be a multi-year project. It's going to also be very dependent on the economy. We've heard the figure that it's about 25 acres, and just to give you an idea, 25 acres is the same size of the parcel at the corner of Mapleview and Essa, where that significant development is going on right now, and that is going to be over many, many years. And for that reason, I can support this, because I just couldn't fathom of having to come up with all the DCs front-end loaded, regardless of the numbers changing from the previous DC numbers. Just for the mere fact that this is such a large project. Like, this is not like a developer buying a few acres in a commercial area and building one or two large buildings. This is going to be significant buildings. We've heard potentially a lot of different jobs being brought to the area. So I would hate to be the one getting in the middle of this. And when you mentioned the 5 years, I'll be quite honest with you, you're reading my mind, because I thought 3 was a little short myself. So if 5 comes next week, you definitely know that I'll support that. So with that being said, I don't know if anybody else has any comments or questions. No? Okay, so I'll, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
So there's just been a lot of back and forth, so I just want some clarification. Is it the agreement itself that you want for 5 years, and then the term without interest for 3 years? I'm just kind of making that clarification. Okay.
Yeah, the agreement would last for 5 years on the site, and then 3 years after
Interest would kick in.
the completion of the building, interest would kick in. I'm just one member of the committee, so.
Yeah, that's what I understood, was a term on the agreement itself is 5.
Now, just to clarify, Madam Clerk, though, is all of that, including the 5-year, included in what we're voting on today? Because I just want to be clear.
I would say along the lines that the City of Barrie enter into an agreement for a 5-year period with the Rinomata Group of companies, and then just add something along the lines of for the interest charges to kick in 3 years after completion of the building.
Okay, are members of committee clear? I know we do have a written out piece that's almost aligned to that with a few other bolts. Okay, I will ask for the vote then. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. We will now move on to our second delegation. I will now call upon Sean Mason to approach the podium to deliver the open delegation. You have 5 minutes, sir, and just so you know, with the new technology, it's not us cutting you off, it's the technology cutting you off. Apparently it will beep when you hit the 30-second mark, so if you're wondering what that noise is, that's just letting you know you got 30 seconds before the electronics are going to shut her off on you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be as quick as I can. I don't think it'll be as brief as the 75 seconds that your prior presenter was to start off. Thank you very much for your time tonight, everybody on the committee. It's nice to see you. It's been a while since I've been here. My name is Sean Mason. I'm here to talk to you tonight about a request for Section 27 extension of the frozen DC rates on my development at 339 Veterans Drive. If this is progressive, modern, missing middle housing, this is a really neat project. Our DCs were frozen for a 2-year period up to June 8th.
Point of order.
Yeah,
Mr.
just
Chair.
1 second, please. If staff can advise whether you're able to hear the deputant through the speaker system. It's going through okay? Okay, because internally we weren't hearing it going through. As long as those that are on YouTube and all that can understand. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me on the... That's actually a good analogy to this development because there's a lot of firsts on this development, which has caused some of the consternation. So we've pulled all of the conditional foundation permits for this development, and I'll show you why, because everything overlaps on top of each other. On these small urban infill sites, everything is really, really tight. The utility companies won't come in and actually put in utilities until all of the foundations are installed. and that requires us to pull the foundation permits well in advance. Similarly, the condo foundation, which you can see to the top left, it actually goes underneath the road. So you have to get the condo foundation in before you can even put your roads in, which you can't get your fire route in before you can move the first person in. So everything in these small developments goes on top of each other. It's very complex, it's very interesting, and it really works well, but it's complex. So what I'm asking for here is a short reprieve on the DC freeze period. We missed it, to be honest with you. And when we were getting that the foundation, when we were getting the condo permit ready to go above grade and getting our financing involved, we went back to the building department. We said, can you please update your interest charges? So this is something that is different than your prior deputant. We actually are paying interest at about 5% on these DCs. And that's when they said, hey, did you know that it ran out 2 months ago? So that's why I'm here tonight. This is an issue on block number 6, block number 6, 8 of the 35 towns, and on the 38-unit condo. The condo is about 2/3 sold. The majority is all the small stuff. All the small units are sold, so they're sold to people who are actually moving into Barrie. Okay, this is a very visible project. It won the CHBA Project of the Year this year. It won the Excellence in Innovation. It's been the build winner for the green low-rise. It was nominated for mid-rise, and I'll tell you a little bit about why in a moment. This is the condo building. There's a ton of regulatory oversight on this. It is involved in the GC Woodworks Innovation Program, one of 3 buildings in Canada that was just let in there this week, actually. It's Energy Star certified for the Part 3 pilot program. It is geothermally powered. It is cross-laminated timber on the horizontal. We're using cool attached balconies from Europe on the outside. So there's a lot of innovation on this building, which was an incredible challenge to do through COVID on the engineering when you're down to 0.5 millimeter on everything. So it took a heck of a long time, to be honest with you. The townhouses are, I'll go back one. The townhouses are also Energy Star and net zero ready, which means there is no gas to the townhouses. It's all geothermal, it's all electric. So this is where the province wants to go. We're doing it. I talked a little about the cross-laminated timber. We're also using parking stackers in the parking garage to get extra parking spots, and we're doing individual rooftop patios for people who buy a small space. They can actually have a space on the roof, and it emits about 1/11 the amount of carbon that would be, there's my 30 seconds plus my 2 minutes, right? It emits about 1/11 the amount of carbon that would be issued if this building was all concrete. These are the modern farmhouses, the townhouses, geothermal heating and cooling and their domestic hot water, net zero Energy Star. That's the modern Georgian. And that's the end of the slide. So my request is that you give me a short reprieve. We will pay the development charges at the frozen rates plus interest. This is what we were ready to do when we were getting ready for the building permit, when we were told we were out of line a little bit. Similarly to somebody in the last deputation, they said that 3 years, most things are held for 3 years. That's what we thought this was. So in our memos from staff, from Nicole Myers, when she was updating the DCs, 2 years ago, that's only where it said it was held for 2 years in the memo. It wasn't in our site plan agreement, wasn't in our draft plan agreement, wasn't in any of those documents. So that's where we are. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much for your deputation, Mr. Mason. I'm just going to start off with a quick question to staff, though, because it does seem peculiar to me that the others were 3 years. One piece of your development was 2 years. Is that normal? Go ahead, Mr. Villeneuve.
Through you, Chair Harvey. Yes, so basically the timeframes really do come from the Development Charges Act. And so in this case, there is an application done of a site plan application done in June of 2021. So what essentially is the date that the development charges are actually frozen. In June of 2022 is when the site plan conditions were issued on that particular site. So, and that's when we consider the application to be approved. So there was a year time frame there where, we reviewed the application and conditions were issued. And that's when the 2-year legislative clock starts. So it's frozen for a year already. There's another 2 years that it's actually frozen for because of the 2-year clock. So legislatively, it expired in June of 2024. So this year, a couple months ago. And that's right out of the Development Charges Act, and that's strictly the legislation. There's some other planning legislation that I'm not entirely familiar with, but certainly I know that there are some other types of things that the city does that are in 3-year timeframes and 3-year chunks, so it is a little bit different for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll now open it up. Just 1 second, Mr. Mason, because unfortunately you've done your deputation, so now it's the opportunity for members of committee to ask you questions if they do have any. Do anybody have any questions for Mr. Mason? Go ahead, Councillor Congle.
Thank you through you, Chair Harvey. To Mr. Mason, thank you for the presentation and the request. Can you clarify for me what the extension is you're looking for?
We are looking for an extension, a short extension, so we can pay our development charges on the condo building. The 2 permits were listed at the beginning. The condo building and block number 6 at the frozen rates plus interest.
And
If we had done this in June 8th, there would have been no request.
And sorry, can you quantify the short extension? So is that a 6-month? Is that a 1 year?
45 days.
45. Okay.
We had unfortunately, the the townhouse block permit just wasn't sent in. It was made out.
Okay.
It just wasn't sent in. I don't know why. I know I own the company. I should know why, but I don't know why.
Okay, but we're talking about 45 days.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other members of committee? Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. So I'll make a comment, then I have a motion. So thank you for coming here and taking the blame. Lots of times, that you missed it. It wasn't our staff. And looking at your project, we spoke on the phone and stuff. And it's really advanced. And it's great to see that we're doing it in Barrie. And, like you spoke very highly of the staff and the work that you went through and stuff. So I appreciate that. And so my motion would be to exactly what we had spoke about, that the city of Barrie enter into an agreement with Sean Mason Homes, Inc., under Section 27 of the Development Charge Act to apply the previous froze development charge rate that expired on June 8th, 2024, plus indexing for their development at 339 Veterans Drive, with the term for payment to expire 45 days after council approves, and then executed by the mayor and city clerk in the form acceptable to the chief financial officer. And I could speak to it, but it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or comments around the motion on the table? Okay. I will then ask for the vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Mason. Obviously, things worked out today, and we're happy to help out when, obviously it was evident it was some clerical issues here, so.
My clerical issues.
Yeah, it's all good. Hey, like Deputy Mayor said, you didn't come here trying to blame someone else. You accepted the blame, and I know that was right from the onset because I did have some discussions with your Councillor Nagusi, about this ahead of today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So we'll now, go ahead, Councillor Congle.
Just for point of reference, and I'm assuming Mr. Mason knows this, but my understanding is that this will track through General Committee next week, will be ratified October the 2nd. So will be in effect as a change October the 2nd, and that would start the 45 days?
I believe that's correct. Yes, Madam Clerk is shaking her head, yes.
Right, but the signing after that.
Yeah.
Well, that's right too, yeah, because you'd have to pass a bill too.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now move back to items that were held, and there was only one item that was held, and that was in relation to the International Relations Committee dated September the 3rd, 2024, in regards to the committee travel policy. Deputy Mayor Thompson, if you want to put that on the floor.
Thank you, Chair Harvey. I'll put the motion on the floor as printed, and I have an amendment.
Go ahead.
To delete paragraph 1 and replace it with paragraph 2 with the following: that members of the International Relations Committee follow the travel provisions detailed in the reimbursement of council expense policy.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any comments or questions, members of committee? No? Okay. I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. We will then move on to, we have no reports of officers of the corporation, nor items for discussion, so we are now to adjournment. This concludes the Finance and Responsible Governance Committee meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.
That was the update from September 18 Finance and Responsible Governance Committee meeting. Thank you for watching.